back to the Amplitude of Tech podcast, where we unpack the real-world impact of emerging technology on business outcomes. I'm your host, Sean Cordner, Chief Marketing Officer at Amplix. Today, I'm joined by Amir Hameed, Senior Vice President of Global Technical Solutions and Innovation at RingCentral. From Sydney to Silicon Valley, Amir spends his days inside the world's largest contact centers, helping enterprises turn customer conversations into competitive advantage. In this episode, we explore how AI-powered conversation intelligence is changing the game, reducing churn, driving revenue, and tightening compliance, while keeping the humans squarely in the customer experience. If you're wrestling with legacy platforms, skeptical boards, or thorny regulation, Amir's global perspective and practical playbook will give you the roadmap you need. Let's get into it. All right, Amir, hey, thanks for joining us today. I appreciate it.
It's a pleasure, Sean. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Pleasure is mine. Appreciate you taking time out of your day. We're getting recording here and realizing that we both have some background noise going on. So for the listeners, sorry about that, but I've got a landscaper and you've got some contractors over.
I do, yeah. It's summertime, we get work done around the house. So
great. The hard work must be done, and we will press on. So anyway, when we jumped on the bridge here, I was asking you your title. Can you give it to me again?
Yep. So a little lengthy, but it's Senior Vice President of Global Technical Solutions and Innovation at RingCentral.
And what does that mean?
Well, what it means is I get the fun job of traveling the globe and talking to customers, talking to partners, and really kind of understanding where customers are at, as they're in the midst of their journey towards digital transformation, their journey towards AI, their journey towards, enhanced productivity, increasing revenue, staying competitive, staying alive, really kind of understanding where they are, and then, recommending or prescribing solutions that may help them get to where they need to be.
Interesting. So where does your work take you? Are you out in front of clients a lot?
I am, yeah. So it's a global role. So I've got teams around the globe. So I'll be in Europe in a couple of weeks. In the fall, I'll be out in Australia again. And I actually live in Canada, but I spend a lot of time in the US, RingCentral being Silicon Valley based. I'm out there quite a bit as well.
Yeah. So, maybe just start off broadly, since you're in front of so many customers and you're traveling around the world to meet with them. What are some of the bigger trends that you're seeing in terms of technology in the contact center space?
Yeah, so I think now customers are realizing, right? So in some cases, depending on how the macro may be working in their environment, quite often flat is the new growth, right? So there was a lot of emphasis and focus on acquiring new customers, and that continues today. But I think there's also a realization that, wait a second, we've got great customers today. We don't want them to churn. So it's not just a matter of getting that next big logo, getting that next big account, but actually keeping the customers we have happy and then growing, their wallet share within that base. And again, it's through customer delight because, the way I see it, irrespective of, the title of our company or where we work for, ultimately, we all work for the end customers.
Sure.
So if we are able to delight the end customers, everything falls into place.
Sure. I guess there's always a cost of acquisition or acquiring a new customer, and there's always the challenge of how do you acquire that new customer? You have to build trust with that customer, whereas your existing customers, you already have trust, so it's easier to sell them more. Is that why you're saying flat is the new growth?
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the macro, right? So obviously everybody wants to grow, but let's face it, pre-COVID or even during COVID, there was a lot more growth to be had. Mm-hmm. And so at that time, perhaps customers were really focused on that growth. And even if there was some churn, it wasn't a focus area because they were still growing 20, 30% year on year, quarter on quarter. But now that the growth has subsided, they've realized, wait a second, you know what? To your point, cost of new acquisition is very high. How do we keep our customers happy? And again, it's a matter of listening to them. And I think that's what a lot of this discussion that we'll have today is how do we truly gather the insights from the customers that we have truly delight them, keep them, and then continue to grow with them.
Yeah, I mentioned trust earlier, and trust being the big factor you have to overcome when you're trying to acquire a new customer. But it's also a big factor that you have to maintain if you're going to limit churn, is my assumption. And a lot of that trust that is built between a customer and a brand, I think, happens in the interactions that they're having with that brand, right? And from a marketing perspective, I call them key interaction points. And those are all the different places along the way of the customer's buyer journey and their life cycle as a customer that they're engaging with the company and with the brand. And one of the key points, I think, that falls into your domain of when a customer is interacting with the brand is when there's a need for customer service, right? And they're having contact, whether that be in via a phone call or a chatbot or email or SMS or however they may be supported. I know one of the bigger trends has been to meet the customers where they are. So there's all these different channels of communication, but ultimately they're interacting with the brand, and there's an opportunity to create trust and deepen trust. There's also an opportunity to lose trust in those interactions. Maybe talk a little bit about that for a second.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And so, the key is from our customers' perspective, we've got to look through their lens, right? What are their customers? And again, in my role, what's exciting about it is, it's a global role and I get to travel, but ultimately you're talking to customers and truly trying to uncover what are their pain points. And most often it's hey, how do we keep our customers happy? How do we drive up our NPS scores or whatever KPIs they may be driving? And in order to do that, they need the tools to be as customer friendly as possible. So you mentioned many channels. Absolutely, right? Depending on the demographic, some people still want to call in. Many people don't want to call in anymore. Many people are multimodal. So it's not just having the multimodal access, but having that omni access, right? So irrespective if I message, video, phone, web chat, come in via social media streams, you don't want those to be siloed, right? There's nothing more annoying. And look, I'm a customer too. I've got many service providers. And if I'm, reaching out to my provider on the weekend, I might just say, hey, give me a web chat. And chat's fantastic now. A few years ago, it was horrible. I'm like, oh my God, get out of here. And now it's so natural with the way the natural language processing has improved. Now I don't mind knowing that I'm talking to a chatbot as long as I can get the answers that I need as quickly as possible. And the other thing, which I think is absolutely key, is the ability to reach a human if needed. So that's got to be built within the workflow, because there's nothing more annoying than, hey, we used to call it IVR jail back in the day, right? Here, press one, press 0, 0, 0, 0, okay, and I can't get through. So similarly with the chatbots, the AI has to recognize when they've exhausted their value, and whether it's because the customer is irate, you kind of read into that nuance, or just realize that, hey, you know what? We really need to connect this person to a human so that they can take over. Because, while there's great sentiment analysis and nuance, which is fantastic, empathy is one thing that is best left with humans.
I totally agree with that. And old guys like me still like to talk to human beings, right? That's always my preference. But certainly the generations that are coming up behind my generation, they're growing their buying power and they're taking over as being larger segments of the customer, the market that companies are trying to attract these days, right? They control a lot of dollars, so you need to make sure that you're reaching them the way that they want to be reached and enabling that, right?
Absolutely.
So talking about trust, there's different ways that you can measure the trust that the consumer has in your brand, right? You mentioned NPS score. What are some of the other traditional ways that a brand might measure that trust?
Yeah, so obviously you've got churn rates, right? I think that's the most important. Like, are we, we talk about, the ABCs of a business, right? Are we growing? How is our revenues going? And at the same time, how much churn? So I think churn is one of the most key things. And again, that's a pulse on your business, right? But it's not just measuring the churn and saying, hey, I'm churning 10%, 20, whatever it is. Why are we churning? Right. And that's where the customer experience tools come to bear, because really now any interaction that you're having, whether it's within your contact center traditionally or otherwise, there are so many touch points. You could be resolving tickets, you're taking calls. I mean, all of that becomes a treasure trove of information, right? But when it's siloed, you can't action it. So I think now in the age of AI, leveraging that in customer experience, we have the ability to kind of aggregate all of that information and not just understand what's happening, but why it's happening, so that we can actually, again, come back and build that trust, because we're truly listening. Truly listening and then actioning, rather than just, okay, well, this is happening, great. We don't know why, because it's all scattered and siloed.
Yeah, I think some of the more traditional ways, things like NPS score or surveys or, just focus groups, monitoring the reviews that people are leaving. There's often a selection bias there, right? The people that you're measuring are people that have the loudest things to say. So you're kind of getting the extremes, and usually, unfortunately, you're getting the extreme side that people are not happy with you, probably most often. And then you're getting the people that are maybe the most loyal to your brand, and you're kind of missing a subsection of people, right? The people that live in the middle.
It's such a great point. Like, I was talking with a customer and they're like, I don't know what's going on. Okay. So my churn is up 15%. I don't understand it, because, to your point, our surveys have gotten better. So how is it that my satisfaction surveys are increasing and yet my churn is increasing at the same time? It's like it's baffling them, right? But again, when you enter into AI and leverage that into customer experience, you're able to listen to all the calls and gather all of the data, irrespective of the channel, aggregate that and analyze that to scale, in the matter of minutes or even less, right? So then when they did that and they actually listened, they said, oh my goodness, there was one specific workflow that was causing all of this grief. The customers were saying, listen, it takes too many clicks to export the reports that we're paying you for, right? It's just not friendly. Why do I have to click so many times? And those were the customers that churned. Now, the customers that didn't care about that, it was like, I'm used to it, whatnot. They were saying, hey, this is great, love your tool. So, again, leveraging AI to access all of those interactions, probe a bit deeper, gives you that insight that you can then turn around and then again build trust and avoid churn and move ahead.
Yeah, I like saying probing deeper, right? I think that's an important concept, because a lot of the more traditional ways of measuring the customer's sentiment is very surface level. It lacks a lot of nuance. It doesn't connect dots, right? That data often lives in silos, and so you're not really getting a complete picture. So you keep talking about AI as being the solution, and we haven't really kind of hit it on the nose. So how are companies leveraging AI in their contact center today to mine data from these customer interactions?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you alluded to it, right? There's a lot of silos, so there's a lot of unstructured data that's sitting in their contact center or their customer experience center. Much of it is in voice, but some of it could be in chat, some of it could be in transcripts. But when it's siloed, it's very difficult to analyze, right? And in the pre-AI world, you could only really do a sample size, right? You're going to try the best you can because you just don't have the horsepower to go through everything. But in today's world, leveraging AI, you can actually analyze 100% of all of the interactions. You can do it quickly, and you can get beyond the surface, right? So coming back to the sentiment analysis and the nuance, it's what's really happening. And then also leveraging that data, whether real-time guidance or with conversational intelligence after the fact, really, leveraging that as a coaching moment. To say, hey, when these types of things are happening, and we're doing it a lot, it's causing churn, customers are irate. So having the ability, leveraging AI, perhaps, whispering in or doing a screen pop for the agent to say, listen, customer's upset, stop upselling. Now is the time to listen and let them vent and truly get to what their pain points are. Now is not the point to try to upsell or sell them on something else. So again, that's conversational intelligence after the fact. And again, even stronger, I would argue, is that real-time guidance, right? While the interaction is happening, having the ability to guide and ensure that that interaction goes the way that it should to appease that customer and ultimately turn them around because you're actually listening now.
And how can this technology answer questions that traditional methods of measuring customer trust and happiness aren't asking? You know, like in a survey, you're asking a specific set of questions, and if you're not asking the question, you're not going to get the answer back. But in the context of leveraging AI, and we're just having a conversation here, and the AI is listening in, how is it potentially going to pick up things that we might not have known to ask or measure?
Yeah. So I think that's where the trend analysis happened, right? So as I mentioned, there are so many thousands upon thousands of minutes or however you want to quantify the amount of data that you have, the ability to go back in, right? And then not have it in a silo, right? Like truly listen to what's being said, but not just what's being said, why is it being said? And that's where that nuance comes in. And then translating that into, well, wait a second, if this is what my customer's truly saying, then what impact does that have to my product roadmap, my service design, my processes? That's what I'm saying. That's the true listening that AI will let you gather and learn from, because it's no longer just a subset or a sample, or to your point, a survey that only select customers respond to. You're listening into 100% of the interactions. And then from that, the tools will actually focus in and advise you and tell you, hey, this is a problem point that, just like that other customer that I'd mentioned, right? They were really upset about the number of clicks that it took to get the report that they were after. In the absence of AI, they would not know to even find that. It would be very difficult to come up with that level of pinpoint accuracy as to what the real problem is.
How can these kind of AI tools reduce noise in the context of the enterprise? Like, for example, Danny Kahneman, do you know Danny Kahneman? He's a evolutionary psychologist, Nobel laureate. He did fundamental work on human cognition and how we think as human beings. He also, before he died, he did some work on noise, and a lot of it is on in the enterprise context. So what he means by noise is it's the difference between the data set and the truth that the data set is saying, and the human biases that we apply to that data, and the delta it creates in our interpretation, right? So there's a lot of difference in how we interpret data versus maybe the story that the data is actually telling. So can AI reduce noise in the contact center?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, because when you look at AI in general, what fuels AI? It's data, right? But again, that data, how rich is that data? Now, we believe that voice is the most human form of data, right? You can get so much through voice. You've got your obviously your tone, your inflection. You can get things like the age of the individual, perhaps their background. There's so much that can be gleaned just from voice, being such a human aspect of data. But again, the data is only as good as the subset, if you will, or the sample size, right? And if you're limiting it to a specific demographic only, and you haven't opened it up, then you are going to have noise, because again, although you've got the data, the filter, effectively the AI filter, if you will, that you're applying is coming from a specific bias. So I think that's absolutely true, and I think as AI gets deployed more generally and more broadly, it's garbage in, garbage out. Right? So if it's garbage data to start with, and the filters are very limited, then you're not going to maximize the opportunity that you can have unless you take those biases out intentionally up front.
I think it's not just garbage data; it's also incomplete data, right?
Sure.
We're having a human interaction here, and there's more context than just the words that I'm saying, right? You can hear me, you can hear my inflection. There's the context of the entire conversation, instead of the way that we would traditionally measure customer sentiment is really just taking a slice, right?
Yeah, no, again, but with AI, I mean, depending on how large the enterprise is, there could be millions of data points that you're doing, right? So it's not just what one, two, it's, what are the trends? What are the themes? What are the behavioral patterns that are coming across within those interactions that can be analyzed at scale? And I think that is what's truly making it extremely powerful and a differentiator, right? Like you talked earlier about the brand, like, the brands that are truly leveraging the tools as a competitive differentiator, you feel it. You feel like, hey, my provider, whatever the provider, vendor, whomever it may be, they're not just trying to sell me something, but they're not, now they're my partner. They're in my ecosystem. Whatever challenges I have, they appreciate because they're truly listening, right? And they're proposing solutions based on the data that I already have that I didn't even know I had. So I think that's what takes it to the next level with AI.
So the enterprise can get more data, better data, more complete data, context around the data. What do they do with all this data now?
That's just it. That's the analysis. That's the key, right? So when you've got all of that data, it's the analysis that brings it all together. And there were BI tools for some time, right? It's not like they weren't out there, but many of the BI tools, again, were only analyzing a subset of the data on the mode of communication only. So you had all of these different waves and they weren't all brought together. So when you've got a platform where, via your voice, your video, your phone, your chat, the entire suite of communications and all of that data coming together, being analyzed as one set of information. And when I'm saying that, that's literally millions of interactions. Putting it all together truly allows you to uncover what's really happening, right? So it's analyzing all of the data, bringing it together, and then coming out with meaningful insights from the data that you can drive outcomes for, right? I think now the time that we're living in is it's incredible. We just could not possibly have done that prior to AI, because you'd need an army of thousands of people listening to calls and transcribe it. Now it's like, boom, give me the information, and the tools are very easily programmable as well to look for certain things, to draw those conclusions, again, based on what you're looking for. So there's a lot of adaptability, a lot of flexibility and customizability, I believe, within the tools to allow you to get what you need out of them.
So let's talk about this data set in the context of improving contact center operations and ultimately the customer experience. How can they mine this data and leverage the insights that's coming from sentiment analysis and monitoring these interactions and put it to work in the contact center operations?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, simple things such as transcription, that's been there for some time. So that's still going to be available. The real-time guidance that I talked about, right? So that's there where you're able to, so there's two sides of it, right? So there's conversational intelligence and conversational AI, right? So the conversational intelligence comes after the fact, the conversational AI comes up front. And whether you're leveraging a human or a chatbot, that interaction is, again, that treasure trove of information. So when you're gathering all of that analysis and you've got it all together within your tools, that's where you can actually uncover the trends, right? It's very difficult to do that when you're in silos. So if you've got one complete platform end to end with all of the interactions, and you're able to look back into them very easily, leveraging the analytics that are inherent in the tools themselves, such as RingCentral, but we're not the only ones. Lots of folks are doing it, absolutely. Gathering all of that together is what makes the difference, because now, it's not just, hey, one person said this or somebody said that. It's look at the trend, like, why are they saying what they're saying, right? I think that's the difference, and that's what AI brings. So, the earlier tools, someone might say, "Oh, that was great." Now, what does that mean? Oh, that was great. Hey, positive. I kept my NPS score. Customer said that was great. No, they didn't really say that was great. They said that was great in a sarcastic manner. The tools are able to filter and gather and say, "Whoa, wait a second. This is not. The customer is irate. the sentiment analysis kicks in, and again, giving you that level of information to perhaps course correct how you were going to interact with that customer in real time. So ideally, in that case, it doesn't even become bad data or a data set where this went bad. It's more in real time you were able to turn what could have been a very bad interaction, potentially churn, someone's just going to leave you, into something better. And I think that's the real value of leveraging AI. It's really in that real time analysis, guidance, and really turning that customer around.
Can it also help improve and architect a better customer experience overall?
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the customer journey mapping comes in, right? You look at what are all and we do a lot of these workshops where we'll talk with customers. What is your initial touch point with a customer? How do you acquire new customers when you've got them? What is the onboarding process within your solutions? Getting that, I think having a pilot is very important, right? So if you're deploying a new solution, you want to have a pilot, you want to have key users that are very passionate about it, that you can actually learn. Because the other side is the culture aspect, right? Whenever there's a new technology, there's always resistance to change. So you want to make sure that when you do deploy some of these strong tools, that the customer themselves are maximizing the benefits because they know what they have and how powerful it is. The worst thing you can do is kind of sell them something. They've got all these tools, but they have no idea how to deploy them, how to really use them. So they're not maximizing on that effort. So I would say, having a pilot group, of key people within various departments, different personas that are going to leverage it, whether it's sales, marketing, otherwise customer service, because each of them have different goals and objectives. And again, the tools themselves are very customizable, but you want to fine tune it so that you're listening to the end user. The end user sees this as good because, hey, ultimately I'm out to delight customers. If this tool is going to help me to do that, then that's fantastic because you've made my job easier. So it's really getting that adoption and acceptance of the technology is so important.
Yeah, you mentioned sales. It seems like a great way to also prompt a rep to make a product suggestion or an upsell suggestion, right? Maybe talk me through that use case a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got tools as do many where sales it's been interesting, right? That's been one of the first areas that people applied conversational intelligence. And so you have the ability to not only, listen in, monitor, provide the real-time guidance, but then also the analysis, right? So imagine if I was leading a sales team, and I've got a global sales team, right? So before it's like, how am I going to do some proper coaching? Am I going to listen in once in a while? Am I going to go join them in a customer visit? I now have the ability, with the customer's permission, of course, where any interaction can be recorded, right? If with their permission, nothing illegal here. And rather than me having to go through and listen in to hours and hours and hours of conversations, the tools themselves, our RingSense as an example, will actually tell me what I need to know, pinpoint exactly what went well. We even actually have scorecards where we can actually score an interaction. You can have a best practice and say, hey, this went really well. This is what great looks like. Leverage it from a coaching perspective because sales enablement is so important, right? So how do you look at your top reps? What are they doing that's delighting customers? And then ultimately, how do you make that repeatable? How do you make that repeatable? So leveraging the AI tools, it will actually tell you, this is what went really well. These are the areas, and then you can actually double down on that and say, hey, this was a great interaction. This is what great looks like. We need to do more of that. And conversely, where is there a coaching opportunity? Right? Where is there the sentiment analysis didn't go well. The customer was irate. The agent didn't read into it. Or whether it was the chatbot kind of, did it start hallucinating, giving false information, or again, did it reach its limit? Where, wait a second, for simple information, that's awesome. But based on the tone of even the text, it should understand, allow me to connect you. Would you like me to connect you to a human? People appreciate that, right? So now we're listening. They're very irate to start. And then when you empathize, listen in, truly understand what the problems are, then that same irate customer can end up being one of your best customers, because that's how I feel, that's how you feel. You want to feel like you're listened to because you're spending your money with them.
Sure. For me, I can see a lot of marketing applications on this because, I'm a hammer, so everything's a nail. But, aside from just kind of measuring brand equity and customers' trust and sentiment with the brand, I could see a lot of product development applications in this as well. So listening to our customers and seeing maybe where there's gaps in our products and making improvements or features that we could add that customers might be alluding to needing, right? Or even if they're explicitly saying it. Also, maybe potentially seeing where there's gaps in our product set and making recommendations.
You're absolutely right. And that's what we do as well. So next week I'll be at our headquarters. We have our quarterly business review. And again, obviously the product teams, the marketing teams, they've got the roadmap set. And they've set them 12 months in advance based on the information at the time. But what I love about my job is when I get summoned to headquarters, like, what are you hearing now, right? And so then we're able to say, hey, listen, I talked with these customers, I talked with these partners, this is what we're seeing now, and this is why we need to course correct. But what's beautiful about AI, we also leverage that as another source of information, right? So you've got the partner community, you've got the customer community through the interactions, and what are we actually hearing? As you mentioned, what are some of the pain points that we keep hearing from customers, which then tell us, right? May not have come up in a survey, they may not have told me directly, but through the interactions, I'm hearing the pain, aggregating that as yet another proof point to say, we're missing the mark here, right? Like what we're planning to deliver is not really what the customers want. How do we know it? Because either they told me or a partner told me, or even better in some cases, thousands of customers have expressed frustration through these interactions that we've got through our contact center. So clearly we've got an issue, and you can point right into it and then make that fix.
Yeah, I think sometimes you make decisions based off of small data sets where the most vocal customers or constituents that you're serving are asking for something or complaining about something. And so you think that applies to a larger data set, right? But it may not always. So how can this kind of moderate the loud voices and provide you with a little bit more context and breadth or scale of a sample?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The squeaky wheel gets the grease type of thing. But in that case, when you're dealing with a global enterprise, you obviously want to, not to say that that's not important. Every customer objection is extremely important, but at the same time, we've got to prioritize, right? And the best way to prioritize is to have an aggregate. And that's where other modes are important. To your point, some of them are going to come at you. Hey, this, I don't like it. Okay, great. Well, if you're leveraging your CRM tools, you can easily look around and get that analysis as well. It's integrated with your contact center, so you know what's happening. In fact, something as simple as, coming back to the customer interactions, Salesforce accuracy is so important. And our tools leveraging AI integrate with the CRM so that, imagine, salespeople can be lazy, right? They do the sales interaction, they love it, awesome. But then actually doing the, drafting and typing all that information in, what happened, who's going to meet, when's the next board meeting, who's the decision maker. Sometimes they can be a little lax in doing those updates. But leveraging the tools, what we do is say, hey, wait a second, you've committed this opportunity in Q1. Okay, and we know there was a board meeting that was going to ultimately decide, when they would be able to make that purchase. You just had a conversation with the CTO, and the CTO mentioned, believe it or not, the CFO got COVID. Still happening, not often, but the CFO has COVID, so the board meeting's canceled until next quarter. So imagine the tools, RingSense would actually read into that and say, oh, that was a gating issue. If that board meeting's not happening, there's no way that this opportunity is going to close in this quarter. It would automatically integrate with the CRM and make those updates. Again, just an example of a real use case that customers are leveraging to, again, improve on their Salesforce accuracy and determine what's really happening, in an account leveraging AI.
That's so interesting because I think even really this whole time that we've been talking, I've been imagining this in the context of a B2C type of environment, right? I never really thought about it in terms of B2B sales and more complex sales, right? So you're saying that companies are using it that way. So an individual sales rep that's selling B2B complex, let's say our industry like Amplix,
Sure.
us helping with complex technology transformation projects, for example. It can actually listen into these calls, make product recommendations, make recommendations about where this customer may actually be in the sales process, as opposed to how it's being presented by the sales rep in the CRM.
100%. Amplix is a great partner of ours. We're working on it, and as we have joined some great wins together. We're working with the Amplix team. We're leveraging the tools. The Amplix, sales rep says, "Hey, man, I just talked to my trusted my customer here, and I know this isn't going to happen." Great. So now we have that knowledge. I'm at RingCentral. We're working together. Again, from the Amplix perspective, you may, because you've got it. What if on my end I don't have? You never want to have a mismatch, right? We
Sure.
work together with partners for the ultimate purpose of delighting customers. So we want to be in sync. What I'm saying is that just provides another fail-safe to say, hey, we heard from the partner that this meeting, this board, whatever it is, isn't going to happen. So that deal isn't going to close right now. Or maybe there was something from a product perspective. Hey, there was something absolutely critical that perhaps we don't have today. That, hey, let's talk about roadmap. And that's the other beauty of it, right? Is we're able to bring forth specific, if there was a feature gap, we can say, okay, yeah, we don't have that this quarter. I would take it back to our product, our engineering, our executive team and say, hey, we're working this great opportunity with Amplix. Customers really fired up, but I got to tell you that this thing is a non-starter. If they don't have this feature, for whatever reasons, perhaps it was in their legacy platform, they want to move to the cloud, they want to but there's just something that they absolutely have to have. I have the opportunity to raise that. Again, the tools would highlight it anyway. And the tools would also tell me, well, how many other customers globally are asking for the same thing? Because then the business case and the ROI gets better. We can prioritize it. Amplix, RingCentral can come back to the customer and say, yes, you know what? We absolutely want to earn the right to your business. We understand this one thing is extremely important to you. We have commitment from our product teams that next quarter we will be able to deliver that. Now, depending on the timeframes and how we're phasing in the project, is that good for you? And again, I've been through hundreds of these, and usually the answer is, wow, you're listening to me. You don't have it today. I love it. And guess what? They can then be they can actually drive innovation, which is pretty exciting. I love customers and partners like that help us drive innovation, and that's what makes my job so exciting.
Yeah, I think a common challenge for us is just the breadth of our portfolio and what we're able to do. And we've got over 300 different partners
Sure.
in Central that we work with, and so our reps are very knowledgeable. Our SEs are even more knowledgeable, right? But they're still human beings. So if there was a tool that was actually listening into these conversations, it may pick up on things that the humans may have missed in the conversation. And so that could help close the deal faster, right? It could, increase close percentages. It could increase the average revenue per sale, right? Because we could find opportunities for attaching other products and services that are needed for the customer or the client. But maybe talk about the other side of the coin. How does that kind of technology and that kind of tool actually create more value for the client in that scenario?
Yeah, well, so again, I think so from our perspective, obviously we want to you win the account. We want to be the trusted advisor, and we don't only want to just make the sale. like Amplix, RingCentral is, we're in it for the long haul. So how it helps the customer is as these, and our sales engineer, I've got the sales engineering team within my purview as well. We absolutely coach them and ensure that they're doing the best job that they possibly can. Are they listening? What did they miss? But now if I've got a customer now, so let's say they're an existing customer, and again, like I said, it's not about just the sale, right? It's about more. And what we like to say is, we want to be as curious as possible, right? I mean, the best meetings that we have with partners and otherwise, we can come in, we do all the planning up front. Absolutely, we're all ready to go. We're going to demo this, we're going to demo that. This is the sequence. And guess what? The best meetings that I've had, they're off script because we actually get the customer talking, right? And I think that's where, whether it's a live meeting or otherwise, really getting the customer to talk, listening to them, opening up other areas of pain points. So let's get off the skip. We'll do follow-up meetings. Who cares, right? So the more that we can get the customer talking, asking, and engage, if it was not a live meeting, the tools will prompt the sales engineer, discuss this, ask this, ask that, listen, we've got one mouth, two ears. So listen double, then you're actually talking. Only prescribe at the end, but the more pain points that we can uncover, because the truth be told, customers are looking to us for guidance. They're looking to Amplix, they're looking to RingCentral. Tell me what I don't know, right? And so having the experience that you guys have, that we have, we can bring that to bear, asking the right questions so that the customer's like, wow, I didn't even know I had that problem, but now that I do, tell me what you've done. And you've got great customers. We've got great customers. More than likely, we have a very similar use case in the same vertical where we can share actual tangible ROI, where we really change the game for another customer that was very similar. And then again, this is where you get that stickiness within the account. You build that trust that we started talking about earlier. And that's ultimately to the benefit of the customer.
Yeah. Side tangent for a second, but one of the industry media outlets reached out to us recently and asked for our input on an article they were doing. And the question that they were trying to answer was, will AI ever replace companies like Amplix in the technology procurement space, right? And so our CEO, Dan Gill, and I both, commented on it. And my position on this is, no, it never can, right? It just like AI in any application, to me, should always be a tool and not a replacement for a human being, right? It should be a tool that can improve the human being's, knowledge and the way that they're approaching solving a problem, and reduce the amount of time that they spend researching things. But at the end of the day, humans want to deal with humans when they're making complex and consequential decisions, right? And that is the trust thing. There's always going to be a barrier between humans trusting machines and AI. So I can see what you're talking about here. It made me bring this up because it's like, well, at what point do we just get cut out of this picture, and at what point does the customer just ask an AI, right? And I don't think that that's ever going to be the case. I always think that humans, our brains are the most complex computers on the planet, right? So we're always taking in inputs and putting it together in creative ways. And so there's never a replacement for that. I think there's never a replacement for just the dynamic of two humans having a conversation, and that dialogue is often how we approach problem solving. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, yes, it's funny you say that. So last month I got called. So Sky News in Australia, Sydney, had an interview. So they asked me to interview, and the topic was, will AI take jobs away? Okay. And, we've come up with an AI receptionist. So I think you raised a very good point, right? So the type of conversations that you're having at the complex level, truly understanding the business, AI cannot replace that. But as with any new technology, the more mundane and the routine absolutely will want to drive productivity. So what had happened in this scenario, there was a medical clinic in Australia, and they had 4 medical receptionists, and it was just a horrible story. It was just before Christmas. 3 of the 4 ladies were about to get on their 6-month, or they're going to pass their probation. all of a sudden they introduced an AI reception. It wasn't a RingCentral one, but they introduced it. They lost their jobs. And so that was the thing. And then, hey, Amir, we want you to talk about AI. These people lost their, and I said, hey, listen, with any new technology, of course, when the internet, I'm an old guy too, right? When the internet first came, we thought, oh my God, all these jobs are going to go. No, but you had other jobs coming in, right? We've got prompt engineers. So the routine and the mundane, sure, absolutely, we can get some productivity enhancements. Our AI reception rate is it's on fire right now because, again, if you're a small business and you've got a receptionist in some cases, why not leverage AI? 24/7, always on, give all the information. 80% of the calls that are getting are routine. What's your office hours? What services do you supply? How can I make an appointment? If an AI can do that, great. But coming back, if there's some more complex billing questions, do you accept this insurance, or what legal matters do you deal with? Always have the ability to escalate to a human for the more complex, the more value added, more complicated conversations. So I totally agree with you. Wherever there's customer facing, low value, Monday, just like a chatbot, right? Hey, I'm okay with a chatbot now for this simple information, but if I've got something complex, I want to speak with somebody who knows more than I do, because now information is so readily available, right? And that's the beauty of the contact center as well. When they say, hey, Sean, oh my God, this is Sean. Wait a second, if he's reaching in, he's a high roller. I'm not going to put him on with a contact center agent, but Amir's available. He happens to be in Toronto, and it looks like he can leverage presence. He's available. He's got the contact. Let's give him all the context so that he can have a meaningful conversation, interaction with Sean, where Sean feels respected, right? Say, oh, okay, you know my business. I'm speaking to a senior person. You're respecting me for the platinum level, giving me differentiated service. And you're very easy to do that because, again, you've got the customer experience and the employee experience, and the tools are all coming together. They're blurring the lines between your old phone system and your old contact center. When you go to the cloud, it's all coming together. And then with AI on top of it, it's a super impressive combination.
Yeah, I think for me personally, if I'm calling into customer service, it's because something really went wrong, and I really I need to express something that I just can't trust with a chatbot, right? I mean, I will use self-service tools for something transactional. That's transactional. I have no problem with that, right? But if I'm actually calling in that phone number, I need to speak to a human being, because that means something didn't go right with the other stuff, or this is not a transactional type of thing.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the medical field, and this was the example that I gave for this article that I was talking about, which is we know that AI is better at reading imaging, right? Radiology imaging. It outperforms human beings consistently, and in a lot of cases, it outperforms an AI plus human team, because a lot of times that human being that's working with the AI will override the AI, diagnosis because of their bias, right? And oftentimes their bias is wrong. So AI is 100% better than a human being, and yet we don't trust AI to do the diagnosis based off radiology imaging.
Well, you know what? There's and this is a great conversation. There's so much we can talk about, but then there's the ethical aspects of AI, right? And this is extremely important because you talk about healthcare, right? So there are a lot of people in the world who are not well. They're just not well. They're lonely and they're not well. And while there are incredible AI tools that they can start chatting with as if they're talking to somebody, there are also some nefarious bad actors out there. There's some really, really horrible people out there that put out tools, and once they get information about you, and perhaps somebody has bipolar disorder, they've got their highs and lows, and when they're really depressed, they're guiding them towards the wrong things. So it's a big responsibility. I think we're seeing globally a lot more regulation coming, because you want AI for the good. But just like that, AI can be used for the bad. And I think that's where we've got to be super, super careful. And that's where, again, Sean, that human oversight is so important, right?
Yeah. You mentioned regulation. I'm glad because I did want to get into this a little bit too. I'm wondering, can these tools help in heavily regulated industries to ensure compliance and governance in the interactions that people are having through their contact center?
Yeah, absolutely. So, at RingCentral, obviously we've got HIPAA compliance, FINRA, so that all the various compliances are extremely important, and you've got to make sure that, sensitive information isn't recorded, things like that. So absolutely, I think the key is to first ensure that you understand what is heavily regulated, legal fields, medical fields, what can be done, what can't be done. And you've got that framework, and not just the framework, but you've actually got the security posture, the privacy posture, and the teams that looks across your portfolio to ensure compliance. And I got to tell you, when we work opportunities, that always comes up, right? That you've got the CISO and the chief privacy officer, they want to see and prove that end to end, we're not doing anything that, quite frankly, could be illegal.
But rather than ensuring compliance of the tool, which is also important, I'm wondering, can the tool itself help the company be compliant and help enable governance?
Absolutely. That's the other side of it, right? Because as we mentioned earlier, leveraging AI, there can be millions of interactions that you're talking to. When you codify the regulatory concerns up front, it can actually stop you. So, whoa, do not discuss this, stop the recording because, credit card or personal health information is about to be shared. So it actually, great point. It can actually be a tool to enforce and ensure compliance because of the strength of the tool. And again, having the ability to look at every single one of the transactions and interactions that you're having to ensure compliance, rather than in the past. The reality is you could probably only scale a subset and say, hey, we only got 20%, 30%. Hey, yeah, we seem to be pretty good. We did our quality control checks. Human, you're limited, but with AI, you're absolutely limitless.
Yeah, I'm seeing this through the lens of compliance because that's what we're talking about, and to me, that seems like the probably the number one reason why you would say yes, Sean. But my question is there ever a time where this is a bad idea to implement into a contact center?
Well, again, it's how you program. Can it be a bad? Perhaps, right? But that's why the upfront planning is so important. What is you got to begin with the end in mind, right? What is the end goal? Here's what we've got today. Here's what's possible. Then what are all the risks, right? To your point, compliance, regulations. What are all the factors that we have to maintain within that workflow, and then build that workflow out. Put out a pilot, test it. Before you go live, make sure that it's tested. Get someone to try to hack it and break it, and make sure that it's as robust as you need to be. Because you're absolutely right. Some industries, you can forget your brand, you can destroy your whole company if you're out of it. It's funny. So I'm in Canada, right? So Air Canada was using a chatbot. It became famous. Somebody had typed in that, hey, they were going in for a bereavement, and so there's a policy that you can get 50% off a ticket if you're going to attend a funeral. Now somebody used a chatbot, and the way it worked, they didn't actually mention up front that it was for a bereavement. They went after the fact, and Air Canada said, hey, no, we're going to charge you full price because our policy is you were supposed to tell us right in the beginning and blah, 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 and they didn't, but they were talking to the chatbot. But the chatbot hallucinated and told them it was going to be half price. It actually went to the courts. And the court said, no, as a business, you are responsible whether it's a human on your payroll or a chatbot. If they say something, you have to honor it. So it goes both ways. So you have to ensure that, again, the chatbot won't hallucinate. It knows its limitations, won't say anything inaccurate. And at the same time, if there's something really complex, always escalate to a human. And if that's not built into the work process, I think you're not leveraging AI to its full potential, because there's just way too much risk when it's left to chatbots alone.
Yeah, the two takeaways from the Air Canada example, I'm familiar with it. For me, is it's interesting that the court said, no, this is an agent of your company, right? It seems obvious, but you have to stand by that. So that is a huge word of caution for people that are implementing end user facing or customer facing AI is you have to make sure you do a really, really good job of training that and building out, the parameters around that AI so that you don't find yourself in that situation where you're having to defend against it. But number two is the big mistake is letting that go to court. Just refund the $500 or whatever.
You're a marketeer. You get it, right?
What a huge hit to your brand for no reason,
Yes, that was not the finest moment for Air Canada.
Ridiculous. But I guess it may have been like a line in the sand kind of moment. Like this happened once, but what if this happens 1,000 times?
We're testing the waters, and like I said, it was like you said, you heard about it. It was a landmark ruling because you're going to start to see more and more cases of if the AI didn't do well, which way is it going to go? And I think the companies have that responsibility, whether it's a human or not. I mean, if you're trying to give out a human-like experience, then that human-like experience should have the same responsibilities and liabilities that the human would have, right? Because they're a representation of your brand ultimately.
Yeah, it makes me think of Zappos because Zappos built their brand around customer service and part of the way that they did that was enabling the customer service reps to make certain decisions, and they're very quick to issue refunds or credits and things like that. And that's costly to their bottom line, but it raises their bottom line overall, right? So the increase in sales that they get and brand equity that they get by having that kind of customer-centric philosophy and just positioning more than pays for the cost of a few credits here and there because someone didn't like their shoes.
100%. When you're getting that level of brand loyalty, how do you put a price on that, right? And that's that differentiated level of customer experience. Like, wow, you know what? These guys are so good that they're going to do this for me. I'm going to continue. Why would I go anywhere else?
Yeah. And certainly this technology is a great tool for companies that share that kind of philosophy, that customer-centric philosophy.
Absolutely.
So I want to get a little bit tactical for a second. The listener is interested in this, is something that they want to implement. I think there are a couple different ways that they can implement a technology like this. RingCentral, for example, has it. You've mentioned RingSense. It's baked into your platform, right? So I would call that a platform-based solution versus bolt-ons. There are a lot of boutique and niche players that are coming up that offer this kind of tool that can bolt onto a platform like RingCentral. What are the pros and cons of those two different approaches?
Yeah, so when you've got a bolt-on, right, you're not integrated into the workflow, the data structures. It's often requires very complex integration, and it may be limited in terms of how much information is passed. So at RingCentral, it's a single platform, whether it be our RingSense with the AI that I mentioned earlier, our RingCX is also built in, single pane of glass. That way you've got it end to end. So from the workflow perspective, the data structure perspective, and the user experience perspective, it's all in one, right? And I think that's the true power of the conversational intelligence when it's embedded. So where the work happens, it's all there, it's all together, and all of that it's like, who called or interacted, what was the duration of the call, did somebody leave the call, how much of that happened, and how did that call, whether it's average hold time, any of the KPIs that you typically would want would all be captured end to end. End to end, that's the key, right? Every single interaction captured end to end as opposed to a bolt-on. And then again, you're getting back into that siloed situation where you're not truly maximizing the benefit of that single platform.
And I would, we talked a lot about the data at the core of this, right? And having the right processes and procedures built out that you can feed into the AI when you're setting it up. So I might think that that's a barrier to entry. So does a company need to go to great lengths to ensure that they're prepared for this? Or is it something that they can, implement rather quickly and with a low barrier to entry?
No, I think the implementation can be very quick. But again, if you're working with partners like Amplix and RingCentral, we have teams that do this every single day. So I think the key is the planning upfront is critical. I mentioned earlier, whether you want to do a trial or a POC, get a user group going. ensuring that it's meeting the mark. And that's where you can do the tweaking, right? To your point, if there's anything that needs to be customized, we're able to help you do that up front, so that when you actually deploy, it's as seamless as possible. But then again, we're still around. Amplix is still around. RingCentral is still around. Changes happen all the time, right? This is what you thought. Something changed in your business. You need to pivot. Absolutely. We're still there for you. We're listening in. We know what you have, and we know what we can do for you. And if we can't do it, we will do it for you. That's the other beauty of it, right? If there's something specific that you need, whether it's a customized report or a specific feature, it is something that we can absolutely bring to bear.
So we're recording this in a time of economic uncertainty globally. Companies are pressing the pause button on growth initiatives, and they're looking to reduce their budgets and prepare for potentially economic downturns, and spending is slowing down, if not stopping. So how would you recommend a technology leader listening to this that needs to build the business case for why this is a good investment, a timely investment, and something that they should press forward with now? How should they make that case?
Yeah, that's great. So within my organization, I actually have value engineers that will actually help with, as I'm sure, working with Amplix, I mean, whether it's an ROI or a business case, what do they have today? Most of the customers that I'm talking to today, quite frankly, have legacy platforms. And to your point, they may have been paid for. So they're looking at it as like, paid for, but you're going to have a maintenance aspect, right? You're going to continue to maintain something that, quite frankly, is hindering future growth. So we actually have tools that will work with the customers and say, okay, well, this is what you're able to do today. Get all the information that they have. What are the costs? And then moving to a cloud platform where, again, it's a software as a service, right? So you've got a monthly, depending on what you're doing. And then looking at, based on that, excuse me, what benefits can you achieve? I love, self-funded roadmaps, right? Depending on the size of the customer. And when you're dealing with large enterprises, it may not be a rip and replace day one. It may be a phased approach. And when you're doing that, it's like, okay, well, in the first phase, we're gonna shift all of this to the cloud. And then once we do that, this is the meaningful ROI savings otherwise, and then leverage those savings because we've proven it to you, then continue down the path. So there's various ways of looking at it, but ultimately it starts with understanding and then educating, right? Because whereas, yes, I don't want to spend the money because I've got something that's working, but how is it working for you? And especially in today's day and age, again, with all the talk that we've had about AI, how can that help other goals that you didn't even think of, like your communications platform, your voice, your contact center? How can they become strategic assets for growth and churn avoidance? So I think that's where those conversations are critical. You sit down and you have that open conversation, and see what makes sense.
Yeah, I guess that takes us back to the beginning of the conversation. But, when you're looking to reduce costs and you're looking at your technology ecosystem, the fastest way to impact your cost is to stop the bleeding, right? So cut licenses that you're not using, turn down circuits that you're not using anymore, reduce port speeds if you're not, if you don't need all that bandwidth. And this is an opportunity to reduce churn. And that stops the bleeding, right? That ensures on the other side that the revenue stays consistent. And then, like we talked about as well, leveraging this as a sales tool, making product recommendations, upsell recommendations, coaching salespeople to help them increase their close rate and reduce sales cycles. That's going to increase growth as opposed to reduce costs. But, you want to do those two things in concert.
Sure. There's two levers. And you raised a good point. Like, so look, during COVID, it was crazy, right? People all of a sudden needed to work from home. They can't go into the office. And, you've got a tool for your messaging. You've got another tool doing video. You got another tool to replace your PBX. You got another tool for your contact center. You talked about bolt-ons, right? So when we do that analysis, that's when we come back and say, well, look, you've got all of these tools. Do you need all of them? Which licenses can you retire comfortably? And in other cases, if you need something, there's always integrations. I think one of the things we're proud of is the openness of our platform. So if you're in a particular industry or a particular vertical where you've got a system of record or some sort of tool that you absolutely need to use, we can be behind the scenes embedded in there. But again, looking at all of the tools that you have today, disparate, right? So if you're using something for messaging, something for video, something for your contact center, something for your PBX, again, you're missing out on all that value versus a single platform that we talked about that can do all of that. I think when most customers are pretty shocked at when they look at, wow, wait a second, I didn't even realize. And then not even to mention shadow IT, right? A lot of departments are just frustrated with their own IT departments. Like, you know what, you guys are too slow. I'm just going to go there. And then, wait a second, where is that? Why are you doing that? So when you kind of aggregate and you really take a deep look within the customer, right? What's actually happening? How much are they actually spending? And then doing the math, and not only, in many cases, saving the money, but to your point, more importantly, keeping their customers happy, driving growth, and avoiding churn.
Yeah, and that single platform, like you said, you can leverage the features that are in that platform that you may have separate licenses for other platforms that you're using, right?
Every day we see that, yeah.
But there's also a savings in terms of management of those disparate platforms, right?
Well, absolutely. That's where, if you've got a single pane of glass, you've got all of the admin in one spot, you've got all of your interactions. You know exactly what's happening, what information you're gleaning across all the channels. So not only does it give you so much more insight that we talked about the majority of our conversation, but again, you're saving money because you don't have multiple platforms to pay for, train your staff on, maintain, upgrades. So absolutely, there's huge benefits in consolidating on a single platform that, again, ultimately needs to meet your needs. So that's where, working with Amplix together, we can truly see where we can make that difference.
Yeah, obviously, leveraging AI in other ways in your contact center can help you reduce headcount if that's necessary, but it can also help you do more with the headcount that you have today, so you can mitigate the growing costs of that contact center over time.
Exactly. And the other side of it is, you mitigate some costs and then provide your employees with more meaningful work. Like if they were just repetitive going through reports, AI can do that in a second. Some of those receptionists that I talked to, maybe you don't need as many. Retrain them. They know your business. They're passionate about working for you. Retrain them and deploy them in other higher value roles where they'll get much more employee satisfaction out of it, and leverage AI for the mundane where, oh my God, I got to go through all these reports. Oh, what it's going to take me a month. Guess what? AI will do that in 5 minutes easily.
Sure. I think we're going to wrap up, Amir. We've been going a long time here. It's almost an hour. Any parting words or advice for enterprises that are on the fence about leveraging AI in their contact center?
Yeah, I say give us a chance, talk with Amplix, talk with RingCentral, give us an opportunity to come in, have that conversation, understand where you are, and then give us an opportunity to truly come back with, what great could look like. So I think the discovery process to me is the most exciting, right? Obviously, we've got, when you look at a sales process, for me, the discovery, when I first meet that customer, obviously we do as much research as we can, not just on the customer, but in the industry, their competition. And then we internalize that. Like my team looks at it and say, hey, how can I make a champion out of that customer and truly make a difference? And so having that discovery conversation, it doesn't cost anything, it's like, bring us in and let's see what we can do. And again, partnering with Amplix, great partnership. We'd love the opportunity to share some best practices where likely a customer that we've dealt with, just like yours, saw some really tangible benefits and ROI by leveraging AI in their workflows.
Great advice. Appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise today. Thanks for joining us.
It was a pleasure, Sean. Thank you.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks.